There's a story you should know from 100 years ago, and 100 years we've waited now to tell. Now the Yankees come along, and they'll listen to this song, and they'll wake in fear to hear this rebel yell.
And they'll wake in fear to hear this rebel yell. Yeah! Oh, the South's gonna rise again.
Schlockaholics, welcome to another episode. Today, we've got the heaping helping of Southern Fried Slaughter that we promised earlier in the week. And it's quite a film indeed. It is obviously 2000 Maniacs from 1964. And it's another one of our films in our journey to cover all the splatter films of H.G. Lewis. We're just going to jump right into the shit today because, you know, this is a real straightforward film. A lot of cool stuff to talk about within it. Some decent kills, some decent gore, some interesting atmosphere. I guess before we run through the tale of the tape and do the trailer, let's get those the history / first impressions out of the way. Brandon, was this your first time with 2000 Maniacs?
Yes. Matter of fact, I will say for 99.9% of all of these, it'll be my first time.
Fucking amazing.
Except for Wizard of Gore.
It's a pleasure to go through them for your first time with you, bud.
But we need to just make that theme our theme permanently.
I could see that getting problematic. Yeah, not for me, but you're actually technically from the South, I think. So.
Oh heck, I know places that I grew up in places that are not that far removed from the place this took place in.
Yeah,
I mean,
Pleasant Valley. There might be one right up the road from you somewhere.
They weren't barbecuing people, to my knowledge, but you never know.
Yeah, there's still time. So, how did you find this film? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I loved it. You know, the last two I watched, Scum of the Earth was okay, and I can't remember the name of the other one.
Blood Feast.
Blood Feast. I felt like Blood Feast, most of Blood Feast's appeal to me was in the slaughter itself, and less the story. This one, I don't know why, but it entertained me on multiple levels. I was actually interested the whole time. I didn't zone out at all, and I can't say that for the other two. They were good. Don't get me wrong, but
right.
I zone out on a lot of films. So to say I didn't zone out hardly at all is a big compliment to any film, and this one definitely had my attention the whole time. There's just something about it that kept me interested. I was like, okay, where are they going with this next?
Yeah, especially that first watch through, you don't quite know.
I mean, I didn't know who was going to live, who was going to die, and that's a good thing. When you're watching these through it, that's a positive. I don't know how it'll do on the rewatch, but you'll know more about that. So, you know. Yeah,
it holds up. It's one of those ones that's just a good time to watch because of several different elements that we'll pick apart today. I would agree generally. I mean, Scum of the Earth is fine. I like it for what it is. Blood Feast is fucking monumental. I mean, obviously, for historical purposes, it's hard to beat Blood Feast when it comes to splatter flicks. I mean, it's quite literally pretty much the first one. So on a historical level, it's fun. On a pure camp cheese level, it's fun. But it is a very basic sort of film. It is very much Herschel Gordon Lewis figuring out how to do this kind of a thing. And then with 2000 Maniacs, you can see that he's kind of got a handle on it. And now he's able to do something a little bit more interesting with it. He's able to take it and you take that splatter that he kind of planted the seeds for, perfect it a little bit, and incorporate it into something that's much more of a proper horror film, you know. Blood Feast is just kind of a loose concept with the dude wandering around creating or committing ghastly crimes and collecting, you know, flesh for his feast or whatever. This is a much larger scale. It's a more well thought out film. You can tell just even with the awesome twist ending, which we will go ahead and break down at the end of this. it's just a better film on every level than Blood Feast was. You know, this is if you were excited to see what H.G. Lewis was gonna have next back in the day, I imagine this would have blown a lot of fucking minds at drive-ins. And it's definitely got a better soundtrack than Blood Feast, even though some of the songs might be looked at as a little problematic nowadays. You know, that doesn't stop them from being toe tappers, though. I often find myself singing along with The South Will Rise Again when I watch 2000 Maniacs, and I in no way support the Confederacy. And there's some certain elements of this film that could be looked at as, I guess, problematic. You know, if you were trying to apply political correctness to splatter films from the 1960s, fighting a losing battle. I think, good.
The very concept of applying political correctness to splatter films is stupefying.
Absurd. Yeah, it's fucking absurd. But if you need to do it, I do think that this film is actually more anti-Confederate. It's kind of in the middle. It walks the line in the middle of all of it and just uses it to tell a horror story. It's not pro-Confederate. It's not anti-Confederate necessarily. It's just telling a fucking story with that as the backdrop. So if you don't read too much into it, it's not going to be one of those things that you feel weird about watching or singing along to the song with. Good?
Now, I will say this before we get too deep in the discussion. Normally, I'm not too worried about spoilers, but for me, a lot of enjoyment from this film came from the twist at the end because I was not expecting what I got. So,
it's kind of a double twist, too.
Yeah. I would really encourage you to come back to watch this film first off.
Mm.
And then come back to this discussion afterwards. Unless you really don't care. Like Jake does not care about any spoilers. He didn't care about The Sixth Sense being spoiled. He's good with any of it. But but if you are not like that, I would definitely watch it first. As much as I would love to have many more eyes on this, I feel like I want you to be able to see this film and get the enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, in the very least, if you haven't seen this, stop before we hit the absolute finale sequence of it. You'll know when we're about to talk about that stuff when we hit the part where we talk about Teetering Rock. So if you start hearing Teetering Rock thrown around and you haven't seen this film, that'd be a good point. Pause it, head on over to Tubi, check the film out in full, and then come back for our thoughts on the finale. Because unlike Blood Feast, there's plot elements that fucking mean shit in this movie. The ending is very important, and like I said, there's kind of a double swerve at the end of this that, in my opinion, even by modern standards, is executed pretty fucking well. And I would agree with JR there. You know, this is I don't think that there was any political anything attached to this film. I think H.G. Lewis is from like the Northeast anyways, and he kind of made the Yankees sort of villains in this, backstory wise. But then made the Confederates the villains of the fucking film. So it's like, it's right down the middle when you think about it. And we'll get to that as we break it down.
I was very happy with it.
Yeah, it's still one of his best, in my opinion. And if I had to rank the H.G. Lewis shit, I would probably put this, Wizard of Gore, and maybe the Gorgor Girls as his best films overall, like on technical levels. What were you going to say, bud?
Teetering Rock. Good name for a band.
Yeah. Or a venue where bands play. Doesn't sound like insurance would cover it too well if it's teetering. I don't know. That was a dad joke, and it didn't work out the best, but I'm still proud of it. So, my first experience with 2000 Maniacs, I think I mentioned it in the Blood Feast one. I found out about H.G. Lewis back in the E-Splatter days. Said about, trying to view his films. I think Blood Feast, I did just get a physical copy of it at Hastings. I think I mentioned that in our Blood Feast episode. After that, though, I was, left wanting more, obviously. And back in those days, Netflix on demand or in the mail or whatever the hell you wanted to call it was an absolute fucking gold mine for B movies and splatter movies. Like all the trauma stuff, the H.G. Lewis shit, tons of Italian exploitation. I mean, I was just getting filthy stuff in the mail on my mom's account for a couple of years there. And this is one of those that I'm pretty positive came during those watch sessions. I know the subsequent films after this, I for sure saw the first time that way. Loved it. Everything we've said applies to my first impression of it too. I was like, holy shit, this is getting better at an exponential rate. And
I am kind of sad
through his filmography. What's that?
I am sad about Netflix because it kind of moved away from its glory days, in my opinion, and is now all about big budget and this and the other. There used to be a hub, an indie hub, for a while, and a lot of people don't know that because we're talking Netflix from like 20 years ago.
Pretty much, yeah. Back in the early days when there was no streaming, or the very early days of the Netflix streaming.
I mean, the closest thing I can think about to it is how Amazon Prime was a few years ago. They've been moving away from it too. But, I mean, Prime used to be also all about the indie horror. Now it's Tubi.
Yeah, Tubi's the last bastion of it, really. Shudder pretends to be about that shit, but really it's just about them putting up cult classics and then their own stuff.
Vimeo used to be, but they've moved away from that too.
And don't get us wrong, you can still find little remnants of the indie horror scene on all these streaming platforms. There is still the odd micro budget piece of crap on Netflix if you look far enough into their streaming catalog. Shudder still does put out some that are like more in the vein of that. Amazon still has some available on there, but Tubi's really the place to go now, and it is very reflective kind of how it was back then. I mean, the Chris Siever stuff used to be streaming on Netflix for a while. A lot of the J.R. Bookwalter movies, I think, were on Netflix for a while. It used to be fucking rad, dude. And then what you could get in the mail was even better, because they had the rights to like rent you DVDs that they didn't have the rights to stream.
Yeah.
So you could still get sick fucking movies. I mean, Bowie Omega, I saw that the first time through Netflix, which is weird. You know, it's like strange to think about now, watching those old Italian splatter and exploitation flicks through Netflix, you know.
I mean, shoot, you get stuff like this collection here, which I'm thinning out of my collection, but I'm ripping the stuff I'm thinning out of my collection, I'm kind of ripping so that I have it, but I don't feel like it needs to have a physical presence in the collection.
Right.
Unless I really hate it. If I really hate it, then I ain't ripping it. It's just gone. But if it's just something that I'm like, I may one day want to watch it. Now it's on my own little streaming area. But I used to get stuff like that all the time.
Oh, yeah. Just endless amounts of it. Now, like you said, you know, it's basically mainstream trash and then whatever original stuff that they put out that they cancel after 2 seasons. So fuck it. Just go to watch stuff on Tubi. That's I guess our recommendation. But yeah, I saw it back then, and again, everything we've already said applies to my first impression. I was blown away, loved it, instant classic. So we're gonna go ahead and do the tail of the tape real quick, run you that trailer, and then we'll start breaking this thing down. Fuck it, let's run that trailer first. Why not? Get a little of that flavor in the pot.
You're all invited to a centennial celebration. What they were celebrating wasn't important, and it sounded like a heap of fun until 2,000 maniacs, crazed for carnage, started bathing an entire town in pulsing human blood. You'll see 6 young strangers doomed to slaughter by an ancient curse.
There came an awful sound.
And from his lips there came an awful sound.
Brutal, evil, ghastly beyond belief. You'll see the most diabolical device ever contrived, designed solely for assassination by a town of madmen, insane with bloodlust.
Paul took a gun and he made the Yankees run, but he
2,000 maniacs, gruesomely stained in blood color.
Old Stonewall said, I'm a-giving you a dying man's request.
I'm a-giving you a dying man's request.
Starring Playboy's favorite playmate, Connie Mason.
Oh, the South's gonna rise again.
Mm-hmm.
That really is a fucking banger, dude. Yeah. That song is just way better than it has any business being.
I can imagine, like, a bunch of parents taking their, the kids to see Bambi in theaters and then having this trailer come up.
Fuck yeah. I really hope that happens to people at some point. It wouldn't surprise me. They were a little tone deaf with some of the advertising and the appropriate times to do back then. So, 2000 Maniacs was written, directed, and shot by Herschel Gordon Lewis. He had all three of those responsibilities on this, and I think he executed it perfectly. It was produced by David F. Friedman. It was part of a long collaboration process between those dudes. I think pretty much all of the classic era Herschel Gordon Lewis stuff was David F. Friedman producing it. It had music by Herschel Gordon Lewis as well, even though I don't think that's quite accurate because most of the music in the film is played by the Pleasant Valley Boys, or at least that's what they credited the folk country group that's singing all the songs during it. And they are stupendous. If there's any score in there, it's never stood out to me or lasted in my memory longer than the end of the closing credits, because just who cares? It's all about the Pleasant Valley Boys and those sweet, sweet banjo tunes. It was distributed by Box Office Spectaculars. It had a release date of March 20th, 1964. It has a cool runtime of 88 minutes, which I think is a few minutes longer than Blood Feast, if I remember right. Deservedly so, too. None of it's wasted time. It stars William Kerwin, Connie Mason, Jeffrey Allen. We've also got Jerome Eden, Shelley Livingston, Mike Korb, Yvonne Gilbert, and several other folks. The basic plot of the film is that these random travelers are diverted to this town by these hillbillies or whatever, and they're sort of held captive in a semi-friendly way for their centennial celebration. As the film plays out, we realize there's more sinister implications to them needing these people, these Yankees, to be part of their centennial celebration. And murder and mayhem ensues, and implied cannibalism. So we're going to check our comments real quick, and then we're going to start breaking this shit down. Oh, hey, what's up, you furry little fiend? Nice to see you in the comments, man. This is a movie I think Cody would enjoy, especially. Shame you can't be here with us today, man, but it's a pleasure to break this down and hopefully give you some incentive to start diving into the H.G. Lewis stuff. Maybe for Christmas, I'll send a copy of that Feast box set your way. We'll see what happens.
It is an excellent box set.
It really is.
Even the pared down versions of their box sets are really good. They're solid.
Yeah, to be honest, I love these movies, and this is a box set that I wouldn't mind having, like the big one of, or like the Gamera one. I'm glad that I got the big chonky boy of that, but you get the same exact shit in the slimmed down sets. You just don't get the physical extras. So if you're not like a dedicated fan of the shit that's in a particular box set, getting the slimmed down ones is just more practical, even from a space saving standpoint. I mean, the one that Brandon has for the H.G. Lewis movies is literally the size of a fucking cereal box, whereas mine just fits on the shelf. Do it, dude. Let's take a look at that thing. And to be honest, if you are like a super fan, or if you become a super fan of the H.G. Lewis stuff, what's $200 or $300 to get one of these sets? I mean, if you're patient, you're eventually going to find someone that's parting for it for a semi-fair price. You get all of his splatter movies plus some random deeper cuts. I think it's something like 14 films or something like that. So it's a lot of movies in the box set. So if you're getting the slim down one, it's a killer deal. If you're gonna pay aftermarket prices to get the version that Brandon holds in his hands right there, it's gonna be worth it as well. I mean, look at that fucking beast.
Now, the only thing I don't like about it is they're in the sleeves.
Yeah.
But you've got the DVD and the Blu-ray. Actually,
Beautiful.
I think no. Yeah, I did. I turned it to the right page too. But
very cool. Destiny.
Blu-rays don't scratch like DVDs do. Well, they don't scratch as easily. They're much sturdier, which I'll admit, when people ask me why I switch to Blu-ray, sometimes it's because, well, it lasts longer.
It really does. Like, I'm not a fan of them being in sleeves, even with Blu-rays. That's a problem with the Godzilla Criterion set as well. But at least they are Blu-rays. I mean, if you're just taking it out every now and again to watch it, I really don't think you're ever going to damage it significantly enough to affect playback with those sleeves. But it's just annoying, you know.
And they're thick boys too. Those pages are. So, I mean,
I guess from a conservation standpoint, it's neat because it's less plastic involved in producing the set. But for fuck's sake, dude, it's not really if we end up damaging the shit and needing to buy new ones. So there's plastic in the discs, you know.
I do think that the slimmed down version is in your traditional cases, because I know that's how it was with I can't think of the one, but I know that they do them like in this kind of sturdy box, and they're like in individual Blu-ray cases.
Oh yeah, all those Arrow sets are like that. I've got, honestly, I think the Gamera one is the only big one that I have. All of my other ones are those slimmed down ones, and it's a nice thick like particle board style cardboard slip that they go in, and then they've got the alternate cover art. It's all the same special features. You don't lose anything like that. You just lose the physical extras. So.
See, I got mine for $30, so I can't really complain.
This is not an Arrow sponsored fucking ad here either. They just do nice sets, you know. They could be one day if Arrow wants to send us free shit to fucking sell some of these schlockier sets that they put out there. I've got several that I'm going to be purchasing in the future that I'm willing to heap praises upon. And most of them have pretty terrible movies in them, but you know, to us, that's gold, right? Like, the H.G. Lewis set is not for your art house film fan. It's definitely for dudes like us. And it delivers on every level.
You know what's funny, though, is that I actually have it positioned on the shelf right next to the Ingmar Bergman collection that I have.
Fucking hilarious, which is, dude. I love that.
Exact same size and shape.
So that's what happens, man. That's what you get, Ingmar.
And my Godzilla set that sits there, which is the most awkward set I've seen.
I hate it. I hate it with a passion, like more as time goes on. Why did they do the Where's Waldo format? I don't get it. It's something I bitched about several times on various shows on this channel in the past. And will continue to. What the fuck was going through people's minds when they put that set together? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. There is no nice way to display it. At least the Gamera set is thick enough that it looks like imposing when you prop it up on top of a shelf. The Godzilla one looks like a fucking children's book.
See, I have like a 1920s style liquor cabinet, which hasn't been used for liquor probably since the 1920s, but it's got a lot of shelf space on that top where you would put all your bottles and stuff. So instead of bottles, I have movies and nerd knickknack. A lot of these box sets. Like I've got my Turtle Van, I've got my Godzilla set, I've got a whole bunch of like the big sets. My Clerks one is probably going to go on my regular shelf because it fits
all the fucking oddball ones up there that can't fit on a normal shelf. It's like fucking Basket Case 3 or whatever, where he's living in the attic with all those weird other creatures. I think it's 2 and 3 actually, but that's where they all live, is up on that shelf. All the fucking malformed box sets that you have that you can't display with other stuff. That's why I stopped ordering those anime special sets too. I mean, what the fuck am I going to do with some of those? They're just in the way, like literally.
Yeah. I have to really like a series now to want to do those because people have asked me, why aren't you collecting the special sets anymore? It's like, well, it's like movies themselves. I have learned now I have to really like a movie. That's the reason why I'm thinning my collection right now by a huge amount. And some of the stuff I'm thinning, I kind of sort of am okay with, but I've learned that if I want it in my collection, there's finite space in my collection.
Yeah, space is not unlimited. We don't have that fucking satchel from Fantastic Beasts here where we're able to just step into a briefcase and have all of our movies in some infinite realm. That's not the way that it works. So when you buy some big fucking huge Squid Girl set and then it turns out that you don't really like the show that much, you're stuck with this big set that's like taking up all this fucking space. Hamaru-chan is another one. Like, it's okay. I like the show fine. I would have been cool just having the discs on the shelf. I didn't need all the extras or whatever.
The discs.
Honestly, at some point with some of those, because I don't want to resell them. It's not going to get me back what I paid. Well, I got a lot of them during sales, so it probably would. But I have kids around here that are into anime and shit, so I might just give them all the extras and just put the disc on the shelf, throw the box away. Just not worth sacrificing all that space that I could fill with other movies. For those sets. We've talked enough about the collecting aspect of this, though. Yeah. Definitely look into the H.G. Lewis Feast set. Arrow tends to keep the slimmed down ones in stock pretty often, so you can probably find a copy of it for like $60 or something like that. So diving into the cast of this, obviously we've got Bill Kerwin, credited as William Kerwood, I think, on this as part of some union dodging thing. And Connie Mason returning as a sort of couple. In Blood Feast, they were dating, which was weird. In 2000 Maniacs, he's a hitchhiker on his way to a teacher's conference because teachers were still underpaid in the 1960s, apparently, and they had to hitchhike to their fucking teaching conferences. So he's on his way, and she's picked him up. And by the end of the movie, they do kind of become a couple. And I think it's neat that it works out that way. It makes it more believable than in Blood Feast, where Connie Mason is just dating this random older dude. That's also a police detective or whatever. I don't know. What do you think about our two leads in this? Because they are basically the two leads from Blood Feast, just playing different characters, you know.
Now, in all fairness, his car did break down, and he was walking. So he has a car. He just wasn't able to use it. He probably couldn't afford to fix it because you're in the middle of the country. You do hit. I mean, it's not like quite like, say, I'm not going to say Midwest because, well, actually, no, it is Midwest where they have a bunch of these garages where you got nothing but 100 miles of desert in between them.
True.
But which I couldn't say. Those might not exist in real life. I just know what I know from the movies because the only time I've ever been in that area is Vegas, and I never left Vegas. So
I've been all through there, and it's true. Me and my dad once drove 70 miles to buy a bag of ice. So,
but also I do what I do know is I know reasonably how things are in the South in those no man's land areas, and believe me, there are lots of those where it's trees. The Arrogant Worms had a song about Canada, which I think is actually very similar to how it is where I grew up. I was like, well, we've got rocks and trees and rocks. And that was their song. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a great dynamic. I think that they have a good reason to maybe couple up at the end. I mean, shoot, they managed to get together and they don't like have like raucous sex at the end or anything. It shows that there is a build of extra trust at the end that they didn't have before.
They decide to go to Georgia together, you know, a little smooch and a road trip. That's what we're treated to at the end. So yeah, like you said, it's not like gross or it's not, you know, like they're married forever or whatever, but they go through this harrowing experience together and they kind of have like this sort of cute, passive aggressive flirtiness with each other through the whole movie too, which I think was built because they had extra chemistry going into this one on account of having worked together on Blood Feast. Now, I skipped my fucking can bag. We have significantly improved performance by Connie Mason in this film. I mean, was that noticeable to you as well? Does it feel like she's kind of getting her sea legs, so to speak, when it comes to doing these B movies?
Oh yeah, I mean, Blood Feast was just there. I do like how in the trailer they just talk about and one of Playboy's like favorite playmates.
And she was Playmate of the Year, I think, the year that they did Blood Feast, man. So that's not a small selling point for the film. Yeah.
Accolades.
Obviously, this is back in the early 60s before being a Playboy Playmate was going to buy you all types of sponsorship. Well, I don't know, actually. I've never been a Playboy Playmate. It's entirely possible that Connie Mason was fucking rolling in cash. I just highly doubt she would be doing H.G. Lewis movies if that was the case. She was still trying to break into entertainment in some kind of a legitimate way, and I really don't know that it worked out for her. I've never looked into her history, but I'm glad that she showed back up in this. It was cool to see her come back around, because when we did the Blood Feast review, I think I even commented on how much of a fucking airhead she seemed like, you know, but she was just out of her depth. Up to that point, I think she was like posing nude and doing modeling or whatever. Acting's not something you're going to just, I mean, you're either natural to it or it's going to take some refining. Like, and she clearly refined her performance between Blood Feast and this one. Still not amazing. She wasn't going to be taking home an Academy Award or anything, but that and the natural chemistry that she has with Bill Kerwin in this, I think, is evident. Am I totally off base there?
Oh yeah, totally. That's all that scum of the earth modeling that she did. That paid off at the end.
So what do you think of? I guess Mayor Buckman would be our other main character of the film. The sleazy, gross, fucking fat Colonel Sanders, used car salesman mayor of Pleasant Valley.
Actually, out of curiosity, I wonder. The Dukes of Hazzard was, I believe, in the 80s, I believe, or 70s. But he kind of gave me a Boss Hogg type vibe, you know?
I could see that. He's loud, he's pushy, he's fucking obnoxious. He sounds really sweaty even when he's not sweaty.
But that has been the ideal like concept of the Southern country mayor for ages.
Mm-hmm. Southern country, anybody of prominence, really. Like,
yeah,
he could easily be playing like a, you know, local business magnate or whatever they call them, or you know, a plantation owner, or
need a cigar,
you know, post-war plantation owner. He needs an eye patch is what he needs. But I think they bring that in with maybe Robert Englund's character in the sequel. I don't remember. It's been a while. I meant to watch that and build up to this just so that I could compare the two, but we'll get to it one day. Mayor Buckman's fine. He's played by Jeffrey Allen. After that, we've got the other couples, because basically 2000 Maniacs is broken up the cast into three couples of people. You got our de facto couple, or de facto lead couple with you know, Tom White and Terry Adams, played by Bill Kerwin and Connie Mason. And then you've got John Miller and B. Miller, played by Jerome Eden and Shelby Livingston. What do you think of these guys? This is the toxic couple of the movie, the ones that seem to have some competition to see who can cheat on the other one the most.
There was the one guy, I cannot remember which one is which, because I kind of like look at them and was like, I have no interest in you guys. But because there was one guy that was just he was the guy in the back seat at the beginning. He was just a total dick the whole way through. It was like,
yep.
I hope he dies first.
That
was
John
my first
Miller.
thought.
That's B's husband, John Miller. And pretty much immediately he tries to hit on Connie Mason and offers to just randomly fight Bill Kerwin for some reason, even though he's not doing anything wrong. And then his wife simultaneously is hitting on Bill Kerwin, and she's like, you can hitch a ride with me anytime.
And I can tell you, I was sitting the whole time at the beginning. I was like, don't piss them off. Do you not see what you're surrounded by?
Yeah, and how is this priority when you've got all these Confederate flags waving and people basically taking you hostage?
I was just, I did like how you could see they were taking like, you could see them tricking him at the beginning with that detour sign.
That is awesome. It made it into my notes. You know, the whole opening with the detour and the song playing over it is simultaneously charming and sinister as fuck. Like, there's no pretense in 2000 Maniacs. You know right from the beginning that these town folk have something sinister planned for these guys. Not just because it's an H.G. Lewis movie, but, you know, if the movie didn't have any title or backstory and you're just watching it blind, it's clear from the opening that they're diverting people that they don't want away from the town and taking select carloads of people into the town and totally making it look like the town doesn't exist after they're done doing that. Like, they remove the fucking town sign, they put the detour sign back the way it goes, and just fade into the countryside, kind of.
Oh yeah,
and
I mean, I'd be safe. But with my Virginia license plate, they look like, oh, okay, let them go.
And dude, if there's any question in your mind at the beginning, you would be safe also, because, you know, you're not a Yankee. But if there's any question in your mind that there's murder or some type of sadism going to be involved in this, it's absolutely confirmed by the little kids strangling the cat with a noose.
Oh yeah.
I believe his name's Billy, maybe the kid that actually does it. It's an uncomfortable scene, and it punctuates the opening perfectly, because it's like, oh shit, you know, the whole time you're watching it unfold, you're like, there's something sinister afoot here. And then when he strangles that cat with that little mini noose, with all those Confederate flags being waved in the other scenes, it just really imparts like a just dastardly fucking vibe on this film, like right out of the gate.
Well, I usually tell my parents whenever I do counseling services or therapy for them and families, I say, you know, how is your child around animals? Because believe it or not, how a person treats animals or gets along with animals goes a long way towards whether they will be narcissists or criminals in the future.
That's true. You know, that's why it's one of those warning signs for fucking like serial killers and stuff, is doing exactly what little Billy is doing in this. And what makes it even more sinister is he's not isolated, right? Like, there's a whole gaggle of kids that are excitedly watching him do this shit. So, you know, this whole town is fucked up, like from the adults on down to the kid, even before they show up during the opening scene where they're being paraded into town and taken captive in the most friendly Southern hospitality way possible. I mean, there's at one point Bill Kerwin even says, like, we got to go. And they're like, no, mister, we'll pay for your fare. You know, we'll cover the expenses. We'll even call ahead to your teacher's conference for you, and just go ahead and let them know you'll be late. And for whatever reason, they don't just push the fucking gas pedal and get the fuck out of there. The 60s, I guess. I don't know. Everybody wanted to end up on a milk carton. What do you got, bud?
To answer JR's question, there is technically, because Mafia 3 is set in the 70s.
There you go.
Most people have kind of forgotten about that one because it does drag a little bit, but it is technically GTA style, and it is the 70s in Louisiana. So even in the South, like this, they need to do a 2000 Maniac. Oh, with the main character being a person of color, they could really lean into the 2000 Maniacs thing and have a DLC.
Oh, dude, if they had done that, man, that would make the whole movie so much more sinister, dude. Though I think if the main character was a person of color, they're definitely hitting that gas pedal as soon as they see all those fucking Confederate flags getting wove around.
They'd be spooked immediately.
Yeah, they're getting the fuck out of there, which is the smart move. I mean, everything, even the way they're greeted by the whole town is uncomfortable. I mean, do you get that when you're watching that whole sequence where it's like, how are none of these people seeing this as a gigantic bad situation?
It's suspicious as all get out when you've got almost the entire town surrounding your cars.
They just kind of take it as like I guess cultural differences. We're in the South. Apparently, they hold random Yankees hostage for their centennial celebrations. So let's make the most of it. And they are sweetening the pot by saying, you know, there's going to be free amenities, room and board, you know, everything's covered. They get to basically have a vacation in this little Southern hamlet. What to do is hang out and be the very specifically 6 people that they need for their centennial celebration. That's another scene that really drives home that something fucked is afoot, is where the mayor comes out on our 2 main henchmen of the movie, really. Well, really, there's 3. There's Rufus Tate, Lester McDonald, and then there's another guy named Hop, who is the grossest fucking dude in the movie, and we'll get to him for sure. But Rufus and Lester are basically the general manager and the production manager of this whole centennial event. I guess they pick two of the random local yokels every year to be in charge of the festivities. I'm assuming come up with the games. That seems to be kind of the role that these guys serve. And then they're the mayor's main henchmen during the debauchery. Really, this is actually the first. Well, they said they did it once before, don't they? So this is at least like the second of these that they've done.
I think that Centennial should be because the way that the original back tale of it, I'm not going to go too in detail of it right yet, but it would make sense that this whole tradition started in 1865.
Right.
Which maybe it started with that tradition and then it ended up continuing from there. But for what happened to the town to have happened to the town, it would have had to have, my guess is that it should have been like every 50 years, in my opinion.
Right, because that's why I was kind of pointing that out, because is it just me or throughout the course of the film, math-wise, this should be the first time they've done it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, since they were massacred during the war. Well, again, spoiler, but this is actually, I guess they've done it before, because that's sort of the way they're talking about it throughout the whole film. So maybe there's certain part of that, like the math didn't line up in their heads till after they'd shot most of the movie or something.
Maybe they're doing it every 50 years, and it's just a centennial celebration.
No, because they explicitly. Well, we're diving into too much spoiler territory here. We'll cover this again later, but they specifically mention the next batch of time at the end of the movie. So I think there's a little bit of a fudge in the writing department where that's concerned, because they're acting like they've done it before, but this should be their first time.
Yeah. Exactly.
In any case, I love that scene where the mayor comes and tells them, like, no, man, we can't have more than 6. That's pretty much the ritual. We have to have 6 Yankees. So we're just kind of left to wonder what that means. Tom does try to use some sense, like I said, and suggest that they get the fuck out of there, but the mayor convinces them otherwise. And, pretty much right after they talk about only needing the 6 Yankees is where the mayor hatches the plan with Lester and Rufus to use Harper to separate what's their ass, John and B. That's the first couple that's targeted in the film. What were you thinking as you were watching this unfold? Because this was a first time watch for you. So when you see them talking about specifically needing the 6, and then you see the mayor hatching this plan with Lester and Rufus of how they're going to separate this couple. Well, obviously, murder is afoot, but what are you thinking at this point?
I mean, I figured there was some sort of sacrifice that was going to go on. I wasn't certain how much of it had to be. Like, it could be like a Midsummer type thing where they don't all have to be killed, but most of them do. And then maybe one of them, is the field marshal or something like that. Yeah. But slight spoilers for Midsummer. But I do think that if it was me, I would not want to stay in that town, period. Of course, if it was me and my wife, I wouldn't even like slow down. She'd probably be like, hit him and move on.
I mean, maybe in the 60s, you guys would have had less of a reaction to that shit.
Shoot, in the 60s, it'd be
But
worse.
still, maybe. There's a lot of black people back then that rocked Confederate stuff sometimes too, because of just the South.
Not in towns like
well,
that.
maybe not back then, but later on. I guess in the 60s it would be different. It was like the 90s. People might not react to it. I mean,
I was thinking that place would likely kill any couple, interracial couple that came through there. And
well, you know what I mean, though. You saw dudes. I feel like 3-6 Mafia even did it. Like rappers and shit would rock the Confederate stuff sometimes in the 90s. But I think that in like the 2000s. But I think that was them trying to reclaim it. You know what I mean?
In the 90s, it's a different thing, but in the 60s,
in the 60s, yeah, I can see what you're saying. That was peak civil rights era, not good, not a good sign,
I mean, wearing long hair. I mean, look at Easy Rider. Easy Rider is a good example of that, where what happens to them is because of where they are.
Make no mistake, too, when I laugh as we're talking about this stuff, it's not that I find any of it funny.
Yeah.
It's just uncomfortable. It's nervous laughter.
Even Rambo. And that was what, the 80s? You could tell me.
That was the 80s in the Pacific Northwest, and that shit's still believable.
Yeah, that's just like good.
It's weird how that stuff works, but yeah, I don't know. I imagine like you had to have known something cool was on the way, and it does make perfect sense that they would target John and B because they're the toxic couple, like we said. They seem to have this vendetta against each other to see who can like fucking step out on each other the most, see who can get the most strange on the side. So right out of the gate, they know they can zero in on this because the wife was eyeballing Harper, and the husband was eyeballing someone else. So they set it up. What do you think of the whole switchboard phone call sequence that we get to set this whole thing up?
I really like that. I wonder if this is the first time that they did something like this in a film where you see that redirection.
Maybe.
I've seen it a lot since, but
I feel like
I don't know.
Go ahead. Sorry.
But no, that's at the end. It's like I don't know really.
I didn't mean to step on you, man. I apologize. But my thought is like, I feel like, okay, because, jumping ahead a little bit, we do later see Bill Kerwin, a.k.a. I think I've been messing up their names the whole time. Let me flip back to my cat. Bill Kerwin, I think, plays John. No, he doesn't. He plays Tom. So Tom later on tries to make a phone call. And there's people like, basically pretending to be the people he's trying to call. And then it's revealed that it's like this whole sister switchboard switcheroo where he thinks he's actually calling outside of the town, but really he's calling the people that are holding them captive. That might be pretty groundbreaking too in this film, but I feel like there's a chance that we heard it in maybe like a James Bond movie or something. Where there was like a similar scene. I'd have to go back through and watch those James Bond movies of the time. But to see it applied to horror, it feels like an early example of that. And just the whole switchboard switcheroo stuff in general, and them calling people like in the hotel, and the way that it's set up with these two is genius. I think it's corny the way they deliver it. And I'll tell you right now, what's his ass? Harper is disgusting. I don't know about you, but I hate that fucking guy with his gross Southern accent and the way he's trying to sound like Foghorn Leghorn or something. And it just fucking sucks, dude. The guy is so gross the way he's talking to that girl, and for some reason she falls for it.
She wants that sweet Southern meat.
Those fucking chitlins and sweet potatoes or whatever that guy has, and all that fucking denim. He's just gross as fuck. But they split them up successfully, and we are kind of brought to our first real kill scene of the fucking movie, and that's B getting hacked up, excuse me, and eventually used for human barbecue. What do we think of this whole sequence here, man? What are your thoughts on this initial kill?
Well, I mean, they were invited to the barbecue. They just didn't say say that they were invited to eat at the barbecue. I think that that whole thing when they chopped the arm, oh my, that definitely was very impressive for the time. But you got to love that bright red blood that they use. I mean,
oh yeah, that house paint.
You don't see that anymore. Well, because they can make it look more realistic. But I don't know. There's something about that just is really cool.
It is, man. I love the way that she plays dead there too. It's so fucked. She looks like a crime scene photo of a Hollywood starlet that jumped out of a fucking hotel window or something. It's unsettling. The edit right there does not do it justice either. Bee's death scene is so drawn out. Like they're basically just hanging out, and all of a sudden Harper takes a knife out of his pocket and he's like, "You see how sharp that knife is?" And then he just like forces her to watch him cut her thumb off. And then they make it like sadistic in a psychological way by him taking her back to the mayor's office, who now claims to also be a doctor, and they're going to help fix her. They're going to, she's going to need surgery or whatever. And so the mayor just has like fucking Lester and Rufus hold her down, and fucking old Lester takes an axe to her arm and chops it off, and apparently she dies of the shock or whatever.
In all fairness, she wasn't going to feel any more pain in her hand.
That's true. Having it severed at the arm or at the shoulder will definitely take your mind off the thumb because it's no longer part of your body. And then obviously she's used as part of a pretty fucking dope human barbecue that we're going to talk about next. But the scene is seriously drawn out because it takes place in like 2 acts. It's one of the few kill scenes I've ever seen in a movie that starts in one location with one set of characters and ends in another location with another set of characters, like right back to back. So it is one long kill scene, a sadistic one too. And it really drives home like how much they've improved doing the cuts for this type of stuff. Mm-hmm. Because whereas in Blood Feast, when this stuff would happen, it very much felt like you saw some basic slashing action, and then you'd see a long drawn out scene of like the aftermath. This feels like it cuts more seamlessly between the two. It actually sort of does feel like you're seeing the arm get hacked off on camera, even though you technically aren't. They do it really well with the thumb too when he cuts that off, just with editing.
A truly killer cut.
Indeed. And honestly, as you watch this film, I would say that with Blood Feast, Herschel Gordon Lewis kind of originated the splatter film. With this, he almost originated the torture porn, I think, a little bit. These kills are all like drawn out to an awkward level, like to an uncomfortable degree. And it's effective, And this first one right out of the gate is just a testament to that. And our next one really drives it home. But I mean, am I totally off base there? Or is this sort of like very much on par with stuff like any other torture porn thing you would see? The thing that makes it tolerable is that it's like from the 60s and kind of campy,
I think the campiness helped, but I do feel like there's a lot to it. But I think splatter in general, it kind of really, a lot of people talk about all these precursors to like slasher films and so on. But the splatter movies are really the true precursors to those types of films. I mean, not just the slashers, but the torture porn and all of it. I really do think that they head into that direction.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's like a gleeful sadism in this that isn't quite funny at certain points. What were you going to
say? No, I'm just agreeing with you. Yeah, that's just, I mean, certain scenes like that scene with The Rock and that bullseye that they show in the trailer.
People's elbow. Boom.
I mean, that just Saw had to have some involvement with that, if you think about it. In fact, they could be on Jigsaw's payroll.
Yeah, well, I mean, really, like, outside of Bee's kill that we just witnessed, the other ones really kind of are set up as games that are part of this festival. you know. And from my memory of watching the sequel, I don't even think it's a remake, it's like a pseudo sequel, is that they, you know, expand, they make it a little bit more game like in that one or whatever, but it's they accomplish it pretty well in this. Obviously our next kill kind of switches over to a really fucking poppin', you know, human barbecue that they're throwing down. Lots of banjo music, lots of dancing. Everybody's really just in good spirits. They're openly roasting a girl's fucking arm on a spit. And at one point, Connie Mason asks, like, yo, what's up with the severed arm on the spit above the fire? And he's just like, oh, it's just symbolic. It's tradition. And she totally buys it. You know? Thankfully, at some point during that exchange, old Bill Kerwin comes in there and like shows her this plaque that, you know, marks this massacre done by Union troops on this Confederate hamlet. And so, you know, it was 100 years ago or maybe 200 years ago. I didn't read the date there, but essentially they know at this point that they are going to be used as blood sacrifices. They don't quite know the extent of what's going on with this village, but they know that they intend to kill them. And that's where we find that old douchebaggy John Miller is drunk and led out into a field for a horse race, which really just entails him being drawn and quartered by several workhorses. What do we think of this scene and the whole reveal? Like, when you were watching this for the first time, did you think they were actually going to draw and quarter this motherfucker? And was it a surprise to learn that it was like, you know, some Union atrocity that essentially led to these guys having like a blood cult revenge fixation?
See, I wasn't quite certain at the time, even after seeing that, whether it was more of a like a group of people who knew what happened in the town and settled, or whether it was something more supernatural in nature, especially with the kind of more modern takes of technology and stuff that they were using. Well, modern, you know, for the 60s. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, I knew something was up, and I was actually quite entertained by how they did a lot of the kills, because I mean, putting them into like sort of like a country fair type deal. I mean, that is something that is very Southern in nature, but also kind of makes the kills somewhat entertaining at the same time. So the drawing and quartering part, you know what? I personally couldn't have cared less what happened to that dude. So I would say more power to them at that point.
And it just makes your mind kind of like it stokes the imagination, right? Like, what other cool Southern fare things could you do to kill people? Like maybe drowning someone in a big batch of sweet tea and then serving the tea to all the people at the thing the next day. Or there's all types of fun ones that you could do. Make it like a Saw game where they're in a giant pitcher and it fills up with sweet tea. That'd be pretty sweet.
Make some human bacon, and then, you know, have the people like rank which one is the best style of bacon using the same human.
I can get into that. So entertain the people with, you know, hints at what's to come for the channel in the future, and I'll be right back. I have to step over here and let the dog.
Oh, well, I will say that when I'm looking at some of these types of films that come out at this time period, it really is kind of cool, because the 60s and 70s are definitely an era where tons of these came out, and I'm so glad that we were able to watch some of them, just seeing some of the precursors of it and how creative they were, to the point where I actually look at this as something that influences modern horror in ways that I didn't even realize was the case. I mean, for me, I would look back at the 70s as most of my take on what modern horror spawns from, but the 60s really does kick it up a notch. I'm not sure that it would help spawn some of the stuff that I usually watch, like Death Toilet or some of the stuff, but definitely stuff like Camp Blood, or things like that. But with this being in particular kind of fun, I mean, I go to the West Virginia State Fair every year. And, I could see, well, I wouldn't necessarily see a bunch of dead humans being used, but I could see them incorporating that sort of thing into a lot of those types of, events. I thought at first when they were going to do that thing that they were going to just drag him, but no, they weren't going to just drag him. They were going to draw and quarter him. So it worked well.
Yeah. And drawing and quartering somebody is pretty fucking gruesome when you think about it. It was a thing that was actually done to people a bunch too, which is fucked up. If you want a good Yankee product, though, definitely check out the death metal band Drawn and Quartered from Seattle. Good stuff. Seen them multiple times. Love every album they've ever put out. Also very Southern, I feel like. Well, I don't know if actually I get like necessarily a specifically Southern vibe from drawing and quartering someone. It makes sense, but I guess more specifically, my mind goes to like medieval times for drawing and quartering people.
Like I say, Braveheart, a good example of one.
Yeah, shit like that.
That's a movie where you got to see drawing and quartering.
But I guess it's so fully believable as something the Southerners would adopt. No offense to any Southerners, but actually you should probably take that as a compliment. It's pretty savage. It's like a hardcore punishment right there. I also really fucking love that scene because it really portrays at the end, and I don't remember if I left it in the edit right there for the clip or not, but it really portrays like how fucked up even they realize that this is, because there's that whole moment after they draw and quarter John that they kind of stand there and look at each other, and there's people looking like, man, maybe this isn't so rad, Are we sure we have to do this every time we wake up? And obviously, like our two, ringleaders, Rufus and Lester, get the party popping again with the banjo music and the moonshine flowing, and everybody's down to kill more Yankees. But it's one of two scenes where people look pretty shocked in the crowd at what they're actually doing here to these Yankees, which I think is instrumental in playing this right down the middle. I think H.G. Lewis is smarter than people give him credit for with some of this stuff. And 2000 Maniacs is a great example of that. This movie plays straight down the center without really ever taking a side on either side of it. The whole backstory to this is that these Yankees came and murdered everybody in this town during the Civil War. So these guys are out for revenge, and they want to take it out on these 6 Yankee guests that they've captured for the centennial. But at several points in doing this, there is a conscious reflection on what they're doing, and everybody involved, including Rufus and Lester, and even the mayor, I think at one point, look like, yeah, this is some unpleasantness, like this is not something that we extra love doing. It's just something that we have to do.
No. Oh, Mike McNally. I was saying hi to him in the comments.
Shit. Yeah. Do you pick up on any of that though, Brandon?
Yeah. I mean, again, we're looking at a concept that's more of like something that we associate nowadays with a lot of Japanese horror movies, because they're the ones that are almost always the expert at the vengeful spirit type, film. But these are vengeful spirits. I mean, and vengeful spirits have a hard time reconciling, any type of emotion with what they were. These people might have been good people at one time.
I think they still are on some level, because they've only been dead like 100 years, right? We're spoiling the fucking movie now. We're not waiting until Teetering Rock. You guys had your warning all the way at the beginning. We've been hinting at it the whole time. These guys are motherfucking ghosts. If you've watched the movie, that's what's going on. We're still going to praise how expertly the fucking twist ending is handled, but that's what's going on here. They're vengeful spirits, as Brandon said, but they've only been dead like 100 years. So they haven't completely lost that humanity part of them. That's like, this is pretty fucked up what we're doing, Or another good example is when old fucking what's his ass? Damn it, I keep forgetting his name. Harper falls in the quicksand, and he like actually panics, and that's our only like antagonist death or whatever in the film is Harper. And it's not even really a death. We see him rise out of the quicksand later in an awesome fucking scene that I really wish I'd captured for one of these edits.
The trailer.
Oh, it was in the trailer, eh?
Yeah.
Love that fucking scene. But his death is even better because he legit panics, you know? These guys haven't been ghosts long enough to realize that, oh, I'll be fine, you know? This is their first time waking up. They wake up every 100 years to kill 6 Yankees and then go back to sleep. They celebrate these 100-year fucking anniversaries of this thing.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if there's some nuance in that we lost in the plot that explains why they talk about it as if they've done it before. Or maybe they did it the first time back when they were initially massacred, like the people that were left over. Actually, that could be an explanation to it, right?
Maybe they did maybe that was how the curse was started. Is maybe like the two that like were the kind of the ringleaders sacrificed 6 Yankees and then killed themselves or something like that, and then to bring the town back.
Yeah, or just whoever was left alive killed the Yankees on the ground with the blood of the slain, you know, villagers or whatever, and it just made a curse where they rise from the grave to kill 6 more of them every 100 years. They all acted like they had participated in it before, though, so that makes it confusing. That's really the only gripe I can give about the movie on like a writing or plot standpoint, is that it's sort of confusing on that level. Were you confused with it as well? Because it did sound like they'd done it before.
I think there was a little bit of uncertainty in the writing, so to speak. I mean, like you had said, there were some people that might have looked like they were regretful about it, but then again, they were also trying to show that these people had kind of lost a lot of that humanity, but the kids and so on. I think that there were like multiple dueling ideas in the heads of the writers, and they never got a resolution. So they just put everything in there, and it kind of went in a good direction, but it just left some plot holes.
Yeah, 97% works. It's just there's that little extra bit where you're like, why does it seem like they've done this before? If, you know, it's only been 100 years since the first massacre or whatever. Moving beyond that, though, I think that it fucking all works pretty well. And I think that as the movie progresses, too, if you notice with each kill, they get more flippant about it or whatever. Like, as there's less people, they give less of a shit about it being obvious that their intention is to kill these people. So by the time that you get to our next set of deaths here, they're being very obvious about the fact that, we're going to take you out here and we're going to fucking kill you because you're part of our celebration, you know. And that's where we get to David doing his barrel roll. What are your general thoughts on this whole sequence, man?
I like the barrel roll. I thought it was pretty fun. As you said, there's definitely a full-on acknowledgement that there's definitely something wrong here. And then, of course, as soon as they start putting the nails on it, you can definitely tell it's not going to end well.
It's such an ingenious kill, and it is the one that reminds me the most of like a proper Southern fried, jury-rigged like saw trap, you know, but there's a way out of it. You're just going to roll down the hill and get fucked up. Thankfully for David, it's over real quick. Like he's dead by the time he hits the bottom, or at least appears to be. Did you have, I think it's in every cut of the film I've seen, but is there like a weird audio issue during this one for you as well, where their voices are all deeper out of nowhere?
I couldn't tell, but I was kind of watching it on a small screen on a portable Blu-ray player at the time.
Oh, that'll do it. But yeah, if you watch it on like the Arrow cut or the Tubi cut, which was just the Arrow cut, it definitely is like they're talking all loud. He's like, put him in there to do the barrel roll or whatever. And it's even on my H.G. Lewis box set. Like, so it's a physical thing. It's not some anomaly that happened.
Well, I got the same cut that you have, I think, of this particular one. So
of all of them, because we have the same set, just different packaging.
Because I definitely would be watching from that Arrow set that they released. It was a good set. Well, we already talked about that though. But yeah, I
like that kill.
Because if you think about it from the prospect of Southern justice, I know that is something that some people do know and acknowledge. There is
try that in a small town. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, essentially, it's there's a lot of aspects of vengeance is mine in the culture. Right. I mean, I've heard stories growing up about things. My family wasn't necessarily, well, I guess you couldn't say my immediate family was not necessarily involved in anything like that, but they knew about it. Things not quite as creative as the barrel roll, but they would get creative with how they would kill people who they thought the justice system wasn't enough for. And, or were guilty of things that they should not be getting that type of punishment for.
Humanity is fucked up, dude. When you have a need for vengeance, especially on like a town-wide level, it can result in some fucked up things. Even on a personal level, vengeance can take people to places they never thought that they would go. That's why there's so many fucking great movies made about that kind of stuff. Lone Wolf and Cub, Lady Snowblood, things like that immediately come to mind on the Asian samurai tip. I mean, then just so many fucking good movies. Thriller, A Cool Picture. I Spit on Your Grave. There's a long history of like revenge films being twisted and fucked up. And that's because revenge will make you do twisted and fucked up things.
Oh, yeah.
If we're following the backstory of this film, these town folks have every right to want to kill 6 Yankees every 100 years,
Oh, yeah. Vengeful spirits.
Yeah. And I mean, regardless of whatever war was going on at the time, I like the way that it's told like that, because the Yankees are still our heroes of the film. They're still our leading characters that we're hoping survive,
Well, 2 of them.
Connie Mason and Bill Kerwin.
I mean, you could tell at the beginning who was likely to live. If anybody was going to live, you could tell.
Of course it's going to be our 2 leads from Blood Feast. I mean, it only makes sense, right?
Well, they were also the only likable characters.
Well, I will disagree there, because David and Beverly Wells were a wholesome 1960s couple. They were played by Mike Korb and Yvonne Gilbert, who I believe also met her end in Blood Feast at one point. I think she's the girl who got her brains bashed out on the beach, if I'm not mistaken. But they were, my only note for them is nice people. See, it just says nice people, nice folks.
Okay, well, they were not
for David and Beverly.
They weren't very well defined, and they unfortunately had the audacity to travel with the other 2.
Yeah, so they were the nice, normal couple that invited their toxic friend couple on a road trip with them. And, as we already saw, David did his barrel roll. Beverly's the next one that gets it, and this is Teetering Rock, which was supposed to be our spoiler warning for you guys, but we've done crossed that line. Teetering Rock is another one of those sequences. I think David Does a Barrel Roll is the only one that's not like painfully drawn out and torture pornish, No, I would just disagree, because like I said, it is kind of a prototype for a saw trap or something. So they're all really drawn out and torture pornish, but I think this one might be the worst offender of it. To get the 46 seconds of footage that you guys see in here, I had to edit through 6 minutes of them torturing this poor girl while the crowd watches. And then eventually it's an elaborate dunk tank, or a less elaborate dunk tank that just drops a boulder on her. It's pretty savage. It's the least creative kill, though, of the bunch. I mean, I like the dunk tank idea, but I think a dunk tank onto a bunch of spikes or something like that would have been like a cooler effect and would have fit the sort of carnival, town fair atmosphere a little better. It actually dunking her into something.
I loved it. I don't know
I still
why.
like it, though.
It's just there's something about that, just because she's looking at her doom like right above her head the whole time. As far as from her perspective, I mean, that's a sure death right there. No, it's not a slow death. It's a slow death as in psychologically, but it's not like a, cutting off their limbs till they die type thing.
Well, and they keep making her repeat, like, it ain't fallen yet. And she refuses to say it like the Southern way. So they keep giving her shit about it. I think she eventually does say it, right?
Yeah, well.
Like through just terrified. But dude, the lady sounds legit terrified too.
Yeah.
Like she thought they might actually drop a rock on her. And when you're making like these old sort of almost Skid Row 60s fucking splatter movies with H.G. Lewis, and when you hear the way he talks about some of these women that he would do this shit with, there's a good chance that girl thought she would really die.
Well, the stunts back then were quite dangerous. I mean, they're dangerous now, but not on the same level because they didn't have the same safety standards. They didn't have to follow the same safety standards as today.
Right. And while it was obviously a gigantic paper mache boulder with like sand glued to the outside of it, I can respect the fact that at a distance, strapped to a fucking table below it, that girl might have thought that it was real or that she might die because she looks legit like uncomfortable and scared. And they draw it out to a painful length of like just toying with her and mocking her, and
they'd have some weight in it too to try and make sure it fell correctly. So the question always would be, did they put enough weight so it would be harmless? Or did they put enough weight to accidentally cause her, not necessarily death, but to hurt her? And there have been cases I know in the past where that line was crossed just a little too much.
True. I could see putting 10, 15 pounds in it so that you got a realistic, like if, maybe hurt is relative when it comes to acting, right? Like, right. Are you down to make this real? But there's a conversation I feel like needs to be had before that. You don't just hit somebody with a fucking 50-pound, Takeshi's Castle boulder that's gonna fucking knock them fucking off of their shit. That's for Japanese game shows. That's not for a movie set. I mean, you agree upon some shit and do some field testing of it before you shoot something like that. I don't think H.G. Lewis was doing that though. I think that this girl very much thought that there was a slim possibility she might die. It's a perfect climax for the movie in terms of the elaborate gore sets because it's the most elaborate. And it's the most sadistic of all of them in the way that it's executed. I think it's very effective. And by that point in the movie, even though there still are some shocked faces in the crowd, you are finally at that point where you don't feel sorry for these guys at all. And you kind of hope maybe some of them might get their comeuppance, but it really doesn't happen because the end of the movie turns into sort of a chase sequence, right? Where they're trying to escape and they end up hooking up with the little like cat strangler kid, Billy, and promising him some candy and the ability to drive their car if he'll lead them to it and help them escape. And he essentially does it while being massively annoying the entire time. It would have been just such icing on the cake if Bill Kerwin knocked that kid out after he showed them where the car was. I think that would have been fucking hilarious, just watching him punch a kid out. Just lay him the fuck out. Because that kid sucked. Am I wrong?
Oh, and technically, you could say that they did have their one day of pain because they were all massacred. So you could say that.
Yeah, but probably by like muskets and bayonets, right? Like not quite the same thing.
Well, those slaughters were slaughters for a reason. What are you dealing with?
Do you think fucking the Union soldiers lined them up and put, feathers up their butts and called them macaroni or something?
Well,
I mean, I don't know. I feel like it was just a wartime massacre like you typically see depicted. And then these guys were like, let's have a town fair where we slaughter Yankees every year,
It's hard to say. War crimes are like,
they do vary.
So, and it just
hard subject to change. Tonight, kids on bayonets.
Tomorrow,
maybe we'll fucking, roll you down a hill in a barrel, I guess.
And we'll just say that they were slaughtered and that it was enough that they got PO'd. I mean, the fact that all the little kids got slaughtered, too, was kind of messed up.
There was a lot of kid ghosts in this movie.
So, I mean, they weren't exactly being nice about it, so I can't imagine them making it quick for everybody. There's probably a lot of torture and other things for the women and so on.
Sense. I won't argue with you there.
But like I say, Vengeful Spirits, it's I would say this is not the first Vengeful Spirit film, but I would say this is probably our first Vengeful Spirit film with a number of Vengeful Spirits on the scale that we're getting.
For sure.
Definitely one of our first Vengeful Spirit country fair films.
We really did miss an opportunity not to run this in that like late summer period when we're all having county fairs and shit. That would have been cool. We'll find one to run for that, but overall, I guess, the end of the movie is basically Connie Mason and Bill Kerwin escaping, trying to talk to a cop, and that's where they learn that not only was this like some 100-year revenge, thing that was going on, but the town is not even there. Like it just hasn't been there for 100 years or whatever. Like it was literally wiped out in the fucking Civil War. And that all of these people are fucking ghosts. I mean, we're not going to go overly elaborate on the way it's played out because even if you have seen it, it's a pleasure to revisit. It really is handled expertly, dude. Yeah. Also, key note, I think that dude that plays the cop and the guy that plays the mayor might be the only actual Southern people in the movie. A lot of the accents that we have missed commenting on sound like they are people that maybe heard a Southern person talk once. And H.G. Lewis was like, do your Southern accent. I would say Lester and Rufus are the best examples of that, where they sound like they watched an episode of Dukes of Hazzards, even though I don't think it's around yet, or something like that. And they saw a Southern person once, and that's their best impersonation of it. And their best impersonation sucks. There's two people that sound legit Southern in the movie, and it's the mayor and this cop. Can you think of anyone else?
Not really. I didn't really hear a lot of people speak because most of the people there were extras. There were only like a few people with real speaking parts in this.
Yeah, pretty much Harper, Rufus, Lester, and then we've got like our main couples and the mayor. Those are the people that have talked.
Do we know where this was shot at?
No clue. I would assume somewhere down around the Florida area because that's where H.G. Lewis did these kind of movies back then. Like he was just all southern, southeastern sort of shit,
So they probably, if it's in the South, I'd be willing to bet that a good number of the extras were probably southern. But accents, it varies. I hardly have an accent. It sometimes can come out and sometimes doesn't, but if I'm talking to somebody regular, it's not really all that audible. I think most Southerners, it's like that. It's only in scant few that you hear it.
My point is all of our main Southern bad guys do talk in the accents. It's just that all of them sound like they're doing their impersonation of a Southern accent, and there's like the two guys that pull it off pretty well, and the mayor being one of them, but even his is like a caricature almost. And then the only guy who sounds legitimately Southern is the cop that they talk to at the end of the movie, where he's just casually Southern, doesn't sound like he's acting at all. It's just the way that he speaks,
But you notice how the two that were after them, I think the main two, they really weren't that broken up by them leaving. I mean, it was sort of like, oh well, we'll just get more next year or next centennial. And they didn't really seem all that broken up about it, to tell you the truth. It was kind of...
Well, they had quite a bit of fun, man. I mean, as we've seen tonight, they killed people in some pretty fun, creative ways. So no complaints.
I wonder if they needed all 6 to break the curse.
That's an interesting question to explore.
Because they never got all 6, so...
We don't know either by their explanation whether or not the 6 is some special thing or if it's just tradition, you know.
For all I know, 6 were what they got. I was like, okay, this is good enough. We're doing 6. That's what we're going to make it this time on.
Why not? 6-pack. Beverages come in a 6-pack. Might as well. That's pretty much it. You know, there's I just can't comment enough on how expertly I think the whole ghost twist at the end is handled. You know, they're like all bewildered by it. They go out there with the cop to investigate and clearly see that like the tire tracks they were looking at before like now look ancient. They do a real good job of making it seem like, holy shit, it really was like a ghost town. But then he finds the tiny cat noose in the car, and that proves that it wasn't a dream. It wasn't some hallucination or a ghost encounter. He, like Nightmare on Elm Street style, brought the kitty noose out of the movie or out of the town into the real world, you know.
I'd hope that they would get one of those Confederate flags to bring it out, you know. Like maybe like one for the windshield. That way, you know, you get any future people like that, they'll see the Confederate flag and they'll let them pass from there on out.
Yeah, they just blasting Leonard Skinner as they drive through those southern towns, making sure everyone knows that they're cool.
Well, I like how they didn't even have the road there anymore. You couldn't even tell there was a road. You could only tell that they'd been there because they found the tire tracks in the mud as it's going. It's just, it was very good about that. And that actually, because I wasn't certain even by then whether they were ghosts or not. For all I knew, they were just a bunch of people who had settled there and are doing this festival for every 100 years to... or
the descendants of the survivors or something. I mean, you really are given no indication that they're ghosts until the whole reveal happens at the end, you know. And we got old fucking, what's his ass, Harper coming out of the quicksand and things like that. I mean, it's, you know, it's perfectly handled. Surprisingly quality shit at the end of this movie. And I think that it shows a deft hand at concealing that reveal, because it's sort of hinted at that there's a larger history to this thing throughout the movie, but they never give you any indication that these people are supernatural or that they're ghosts or that the town isn't there or anything like that. You know, I guess the only Easter egg you could see that they plant is when the guy totally removes this sign for the town altogether at the beginning of the movie and chucks it into the grass, because the town's not even supposed to be there, right?
So that's the question, really, at the end of it all, as to how it all goes down. I mean, they explain a little bit at the end to try and, you know, wrap it up. But even then, like you said, it very much felt like they had been doing this before. But everything points to it having... This is the first time that they've had a centennial. So... When
was the Civil War, man? Are we wrong on the date? Maybe they had one before.
It was the end of the Civil War.
Yeah, but is it 18 or 17? Because
18. 18.
That's crazy. That's so weird to me that it was like that. I mean, that's not terribly long ago.
Oh no, it's not. Matter of fact, Civil War ended on April 9th, 1865.
Okay, so then definitely this is 100 years after this town was supposedly massacred.
Yeah.
So why are they talking about it like they've done it before? that's the only thing in this movie that is like a flaw, in my opinion.
See,
is the way they're talking about it like that.
You see, the quick fix for this would be to say that it comes back every 50 years. And they could still say it's the centennial. But they could say...
Can they, though? Isn't a centennial a 100-year celebration? I mean...
Well, they could still say that the one that they're at is the centennial, I mean. Because the one they're at is 100 years by. They could just say they come back every 50 years. Well, this is the second time, and it's now the centennial.
You know what the quickest way to do it is? Well, no, because they explicitly say, I kicked that fucking bag can again. They explicitly say that we'll be back in 100 years at the end of the movie.
Like I say,
so it's happening every 100 years. It's just a writing. It has to just be like an oversight in the writing, you know.
Because they even talk about like the technology and stuff gets adapted to the time period, like they know that it's happened before. Because they're even talking about, I wonder what kind of things we'll have this time, like those cars and stuff this time around. I wonder what else we'll have.
Right. Like, I think honestly the best explanation is that they thought a centennial was a 50-year celebration, so they wrote the movie like that, and then towards the end of production, they realized, oh, fuck, it's 100 years. Yeah, so we've got to make that make sense. So they just went with it because they thought no one would notice. But we noticed, man. I mean, it's very clear that they've at least really ran through the scenarios in their head. I mean, they sound like they've done it before the whole time. So, I don't know. Overall, do you have any final thoughts on this? You know, favorite scenes, favorite characters, anything like that? I'm gonna go let my dog back in. You run through those. I can still hear you.
Yeah, as far as my favorite scene, it's still, I don't know why. I just like that whole rock throwing it at the target thing. I actually wish that they had done, I almost wish they had more of them to go out because I love the carnival game aspect of the deaths. I think this is still very creative for the time. I love the twist ending. It's implied enough for you to actually guess what's going on, but not necessarily enough for you to 100% understand it. And I love that. I do think that, of course, if you sat here for this whole discussion, and you've never seen it, I'm kind of sad for you because you miss out now on catching it for the first time. But I still think it's worth watching because it's a fun film, especially if you like that sort of thing. Excuse me. But as far as any type of slaughter type movie, it's great. One thing I was going to bring up also, but I wanted to wait till you got back mode to discuss it because I want your opinion on it. Arrow did an amazing job cleaning this up. I'm not going to lie. It's crisp as hell. But I'm kind of on the fence about that. Movies like this, in my opinion, should not be crisp. They should be raunchy looking as hell. They need to have a little bit of raggedy nature on the edges. But it still looks good despite it. But I wonder if having it kind of like VHS kind of quality would improve the feel for the film.
It always 100% does with older films. I mean, I get it why people want to see stuff cleaned up, remastered, color corrected, all that stuff. It's nice to see it. I mean, I will say for the Arrow set for these, I don't know if you've noticed this, but you might now after I mention it. Like, I'm sure you have the James Bond Blu-ray set.
Well, just the DVDs.
So, yeah, you watch some of those older Bond films like Dr. No and From Russia with Love, and they look just like Blood Feast on Blu-ray. Like, they look just like 2000. Like, there's a certain color quality, a certain way that films from back then look when they're cleaned up like this. Because we've seen them cleaned up on DVD and everything, but for the most part, we were still watching that shit on like classic TVs back then, tube TVs. I will never forget the first time watching Blood Feast on like a tube TV, just cracking some beers in my basement and seeing that thing, and it felt like so much more underground, like DIY grossness to it, you know. Watching a lot of those old like Splatter Farm and things like that too. It's exactly the reason I love this stuff. I do actually have a converter that allows me to run my HD shit through one of those TVs and make it look like that again. And once I get my basement finished being like remodeled and redone, I'm going to have that set up. I think if a movie is from a certain year where that's how you would have seen it, that's how you should see it.
I mean,
you know,
just to name a good idea of a modern film, because we were talking about that earlier about like Shudder and all that. A good, not necessarily micro budget, but B level. Well, I think they were micro budget. Was the WNUF Halloween special? They worked painstakingly to make that film look like it was taped off of a VHS tape in the 80s and dug up and put in the player to view now. And it was spectacular in execution.
Oh, I believe it, dude. I mean, here's the deal, dude. Okay. Most movies that were shot on VHS or shot to be on VHS, I mean, there's obviously bigger budget examples, like even Full Moon. A lot of their stuff looks great when it's remastered because that's how it was originally meant to be fucking seen anyways.
Yeah.
They would shoot the shit like film style and then have it cropped down for VHS. And everybody kind of had to deal with that on some level because that was the world we lived in. TVs were square and we had tapes. But certain stuff, especially that older stuff, like it doesn't get better if you remaster it and watch it on a flat screen. It really doesn't. I love Chris Sieber. I love his movies. A lot of his movies look like shit on a flat screen. They need to be seen like on the TV they were shot to be seen on. You know, those scan lines, that glow, it adds something. You know, by my summation, every true film fan should have a tube TV setup. Like, whether you're collecting stuff for that or you use a converter like I'm about to be doing to run your shit through that sometimes, you need to be able to have some connection to that texture that we've lost, you know, because that's really what it boils down to. Texture of a lot of these films is gone because you're seeing them so cleaned up that, yeah, you can see other stuff. You can see the texture, so to speak, of certain other things a lot better. But the whole texture of the experience is kind of gone. I've been thinking about that a lot lately, covering these Full Moon films with these guys. I think Puppet Master looks better in 4:3, like on an old TV. It's scary, you know.
And again, it varies from film to film because even some of the old films, I'll give you an example. Errol Flynn's Adventures of Robin Hood. Definitely, they were not thinking of HD TVs back when that was filmed.
No.
Shoot, Errol Flynn probably never heard of an HD TV before he died. But that film works spectacularly on Blu-ray. Matter of fact, that was the first time that I looked at a film.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first time I ever looked at a film on Blu-ray and said to myself, okay, yes, they can clean up an old film enough on Blu-ray to make it worthwhile. But yeah, I mean, it's all there. I mean, like 2001 Space Odyssey, good example of one that was...
Yes, there are those ones...
planned for 4K before 4K existed.
I still think there's a certain, like, even for you guys that do that stuff, if you went back and like fed that shit through into a tube TV and watched it the way you watched it back in the day, there'd be something you could take from that still as well. I mean, I get it. There are certain ones that look good. While I compared the Blood Feast shit to the James Bond Blu-rays, it wasn't in a negative way. I mean, they both look great. The colors pop. Everything is like super fucking clear and crisp and everything. And it has its own appeal. And I get that. Like, I like it. But I'll always love watching, like, dude, I still have the tapes in my closet from when I would tape the old TNT James Bond marathons that they would do. That's how I first got into it. And it was well before I started making like YouTube content and shit. And I would just do like martini fucking marathons pretty much at the same time, where I would, just drink a ton of martinis and watch the James Bond movies as they would air on TNT and tape them, I mean, there's that whole vibe. There's a magic that comes out of that tube TV when you turn it on.
I mean, again, I'm kind of in the middle ground with that, because I'm definitely not saying that all films that are old need to be in that like old school format, but I'm not saying again that all films need to be in the high one either. To me, it's kind of like a film-on-film a case-by-case basis. You know what I mean? But for Herschel Gordon Lewis, there is no doubt in my mind these films have a better effect on that old school kind of grainy VHS feel. I have
for sure,
no doubt
dude.
in my mind.
And I would agree. It's not a hard rule. You can't say that any one format. The best format is 4K or whatever the clearest picture is. I mean, that's facts, because you're going to be seeing the film the clearest way possible. Is that always the best? Do you always want to experience it that way? No. I mean, you do what you want to do. I love plenty of movies on fucking Blu-ray and whatever, but there's been times where I've just
Hello. Yeah, totally agree. When it comes to these types of films, it is. I mean, I know even Dark Crystal, which was an 80s film, when I saw it in 4K, I felt like I need to go back to DVD or Blu-ray because it was too clear. You could see too much of the stuff. Okay, you're unfrozen.
I'm back. Just let me figure out my connection here. But yeah, I mean, it's, oh, it looks like we're good. Some stuff, it ruins it. Back to the Future is a good example of like a Blu-ray set where I don't really like watching it on Blu-ray. I can see too many of the flaws in it, and it just, I'd prefer to watch it with like muddier picture quality, I guess. I don't know.
Shark still
and then pretty much all the old black and white horror, like the whole reason I figured out how to do the conversion to tube TV from HDMI was because I wanted to watch my Universal Monsters movies the way I remembered them.
Best
I
way
think
to
that
do
stuff
it
shines on a tube TV, glowing out at you on a Saturday night. Bela Lugosi just,
I wonder if it's also a generational thing. Like, I wonder if any of the people who are like Gen Z, who have never really even watched anything on anything but HD or higher, I wonder how
the magic's there.
I
do it, dude. I've done it with like my nieces and nephews and cousins and shit. I have a lot of younger relatives, so same people I used to run the D&D nights with, and definitely I've shown those kids tons of movies like on tube TVs over the years. That's kind of how I started them out, really. I used to, for years, take like a portable tube TV into my front yard with like a stack of VHS tapes and just play horror movies on 4th of July. And the neighborhood kids would come over. Like most of the girls I work with at the market now were like kids that sat on my lap and watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre with me, because they're all, people that we live with on the block. And they've been coming to my house for years. And I used to like play Evil Dead out there, fucking Tenebrae or something like that. And the kids would just come over and hang out. And I work with one of those girls now that I did that with 18 years ago, which is pretty cool. Like, she's a grown adult now and off doing her own thing. But 18 years ago, she sat on my lap in the front yard. There's pictures of it on, because we've been friends with our neighbors forever, where it's like a small town, and yeah, man. I mean, that's,
I think that
tradition. Hoping to revive it soon.
Yeah, I do think that people are missing something when they don't get that experience. So it just makes me wonder.
But it's not required.
No, it's not required.
Makes you.
But yeah. Yeah.
Well, what does it make you wonder?
I do wonder what it's like to have never really experienced that sort of thing. To have never had only a black and white TV. Like, that was for the first 6 years of my life, I only saw TV in black and white. And we didn't get color TV until mid 80s. And, or to have all of this, this stuff at hand, at your fingertips, where all you had was your local video store or your whatever, you were at the mercy of whatever the schedule was for the 3 channels you had. And right. I have to wonder, what it's like to have never experienced that. It's hard to get into a mindset, really, in a lot of ways when you've never grown up in it, because the mindset's in a different way.
Yes and no. I think streaming culture has retrained a lot of our minds, though, where we relate to that more than we would like to admit that we do. And probably more than we did 20 years ago, when streaming was first becoming a thing. I mean, back then I was a hardcore physical media dude, like fuck streaming, I was very much in the Dave camp of stuff of I won't do it, but then you'll be surprised at how fast convenience will whittle away your fucking principles when it comes to certain things. Yeah. I have no shame in admitting that. I stream the fuck out of some stuff, but it saves me also buying crap that I really don't want in the collection. So.
As a collector, I've gone through many phases in my life, and I've gone back and forth on it, but it usually goes between the 2 types of things. There's that kind of false narrative that a lot of us have that we are historians with our own museums of what is media. But the museum includes Titanic or something that's mass produced like that.
But you know what it also includes is your opinion on Titanic.
Yeah.
That has value. It has value to me. It has value to other people. That's something in film fandom I think people forget, which is why there's people that avoid covering mainstream films or films they think other people have talked about. And that's that they think their opinion on it doesn't have value to people that care about them and care about their opinion on things. Everybody's entitled to be a film critic of any film that they want to talk about,
as I've gotten older, I admit it's getting more and more about making sure that you have stuff in the collection that if it was to disappear tomorrow on streaming, that you wouldn't go, meh. Like a good example, this one here I'm kind of getting rid of in the collection, Afterlife, the series. And it's got Andrew Lincoln, the Walking Dead guy, in it. I watched it once. It was all right. But would I ever watch it again if I had zero way to watch it tomorrow? Would I be like, darn, I really want to watch it? No. I got plenty of other stuff. That we're so saturated with media now. It goes back, but let's say something like The Great Outdoors with John Candy, one of my favorite comedies of all time. For better or for worse. if that were to disappear from streaming tomorrow, I would be upset if I could not, find a way to see it. And I really think that is the mindset that a lot of people should be taking. I think there should be some sort of film preservation group, but there are people who really preserve it and keep hold of a lot of these things. But
for sure, dude. And the internet is always, I mean, see, I think that's where there's the difference between, because you're a few years older than I am. I'm 35. You're a little bit older. I've always had the internet that I can rely on. Like, for sure, all of these fucking movies are out there somewhere outside of obscure things that, are like shot on video stuff, or you can find a download of like anything that ever costs more than $30,000, and that's the truth. And I think that that's something that, coming from a later generation than you, the internet was more of a factor in it. I hoard movies compulsively because I love movies, like we all do. But I think that there's a big purging coming in my collection too, eventually, where I'm going to be selling off basically everything that doesn't give me that joy to pull it off the shelf like I would at a video store.
Yeah.
I don't know if I need a fucking copy of Barfly, but I definitely need copies of like other things. It's just, I don't give a fuck about Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies. I bought it on VHS because it was funny. But now I have like 8 volumes of that stuff. I got to get rid of all of it, either into the trash or to people that would appreciate it. But
that's the
you've
thing.
Inspired me a lot to start whittling it down, man.
It's definitely something that people should think about when they've got a collection, because they are big and they are hard to maintain. But at the same time, I am very glad to have certain things. Like me, I can think of right now, first thing on top of my head, Games Master, what have you done? If I had not had that physical media of it, prior to me putting it up on YouTube, the only thing you could find on it is 2 reviews of it that are on sites that are like old. And like I mentioned that it was shown at a con some time ago. And I think there was a VHS that was still floating around eBay for like $500. And to me, I'm glad to have a physical of it because it's worth, it's worth making sure that I have it to do. I admit, I'm someone that understands that the internet is definitely not stable, especially, our internet went out for 2 days last week. A good example. It's so I like being able to have that on me. I'm kind of sad about how video games are, to where most video games, even if you have it entirely downloaded, you're not allowed to play it unless it can connect online first. And I'm just like, whatever happened to the days where you could just enjoy it?
It's pretty whack. Like, even the games I get with PlayStation Plus, I have to have an active PlayStation Plus subscription that's signed in every so often to be able to fuck with them. I get it. It's, it's a give and take. In terms of like old B movies, you can just download those things. So you're not going to run into that as much.
And do I need a copy of Cyborg 2? No, I don't. But, it's...
I think we'll live our lives perfectly fine, without copies of Kickboxer 4 in our fucking collection or something. It doesn't really matter.
And that's something I think that I've gotten over as I've gotten older, is I used to feel like I had to collect everything. I don't know if any of y'all have had that feeling where, you get like, there were like 8 sequels to this. The first one was great. All the rest of them suck. But I'm going to collect them all anyway.
Until this last year, I was maybe one of our worst binge purchasers of movies. Like I would go to Dollar Tree and spend $60 or something. You eventually, I think, grow out of it, which sounds weird to say as a 35-year-old human, but yeah, eventually you realize, like, I don't know, with inspiration, hopefully from people like Brandon, you realize, like, do I need that? Or is it just there so that I can say I have another movie in my collection? Like, I don't really care about numbers. I counted my movies at one point and it was a lot, like thousands. And now I just don't really care. I mean, I honestly, I want to get rid of some of them because it just takes up so much space.
I have that really cool Dark Shadows set, which I probably still won't get rid of because it looks freaking awesome on the shelf. So I'm getting something out of it as like a conversation piece. But it was
right, but do you like the show is the question.
Never seen it. And
what the fuck?
I know. Well, that's the thing is I need to get them down to the point where I can watch them all.
That space.
But the reason why I got it is Jake and I were in competition to have the shows with the most episodes. And Dark Shadows was a clear winner until he got the entire series of MASH, which, you know, that easily beat
I think you should keep that going. It sounds ridiculous enough that I think you should keep it going.
But, I mean, I liked
Didn't he just get MASH? So he just broke the record. Well, I feel like you have to come back and try to find something else that you can purchase that. See, I'm always gonna I'm always gonna sign off on this sort of bad behavior because it's funny. Like,
we used to have competitions.
Yeah, it's taking up space on your shelf that you're probably never gonna watch. Is there like a Days of Our Lives box set that you could get that would like?
Oh, I'm sure that
cement your record.
If I could get if they did a complete Sesame Street series box set, I'm sure that one would be. I think that'd beat everybody, but.
Well, what's the
we
number
used to do that
beat?
with actors and directors too, like who had the most actor credits for this actor or director.
What's the number to beat with this MASH thing? What's it, like 170 episodes or something? It was like 11 seasons, I think. MASH.
Let me see here. MASH episodes, because it was more than that. Let's see here. MASH had. Oh, come on. That episode list. IMDb page has him. Oh, never mind. I still beat Jacob because Dark Shadows has much more. 251 episodes for MASH.
Across how many seasons?
16.
Damn, I was off by 5 seasons. I thought there was only 11. I think I'm thinking of Cheers.
Let's see here. Like the one that I have, Dark Shadows, has 1,200 episodes.
Okay, yeah.
So
quite the difference.
Yeah, it's quite the difference.
Over how many seasons?
That's where it's funny.
Dark Shadows has how many seasons?
Oh, hold on. It's I believe
it's like a soap
2.
opera, isn't it?
No, it's one season, but over 2 years. So 2 seasons technically.
And it had how many episodes? 1,000 over 2 years?
It was like but keep in mind it was a soap opera, so it was running every day.
There's still not even enough days in 2 years for it to have that many.
Oh wait, never mind. It was a number of years, but it was but less years than MASH. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About 5 years. But
5 years. I guess if they ran an episode every day, that's nuts, dude. That's fucking nuts.
Which is why it'd probably be hard for me to do it. But the box set is really cool because it's a coffin-style box set. You open it up and the DVDs line up, so it's got a picture of the body.
There you go.
The body on the back cover art, so it looks really cool. But yeah, it's about whether, I mean, there was this thing like the Mary Kondo and her little thing of, does it have value? You take every item in your collection and you feel like, does this have value to me? Does this copy of Baby Geniuses and Baby Geniuses 2, does this have value to me? Does it bring me joy? And
is it something I'm going to pull off my shelf in the future and nostalgically look at the cover of and say, I need to watch this today?
Or even if you pull it off the cover and the shelf and you just like enjoy looking at it and enjoying the memories of having it.
That too.
But yeah, no, I will never watch that again. I'm ripping them just in case, but that's the idea, is that one great thing about having a 20 terabyte hard drive is that I can rip these and keep them on the hard drive, and that way if I ever do change my mind, I can still watch them, but they don't take up space in my collection.
Enough.
Like for me, I really love Barfly, but that's my father's thing. So
I like Barfly too, but I don't know if I need a VHS copy of it.
True.
Takes
up
a lot of
my
space.
Friends.
So we're going to be closing this out right now with any closing statements that we have. I really don't have anything going on at the moment, but we'll be getting to some shit in the near future on Retro Cult on video. Over at Septum Sin versus the World, you guys got anything going on that you want to plug or anything upcoming that they should look out for?
Watch the Anhedonia Project on the Anhedonia Films Unlimited. My first film as a director, not the last. Provided I can get this stuff done. But I don't expect Hamityville webcam to come out until early next year. But Dave's film, Tales Forgotten, we're working on that. I'm pretty sure that we'll probably get that out by the end of the year, if not early next year. But it'll be really early next year if it is that long. So we got some fun stuff in that regard, I think.
Right on. I don't know what's going on with Cody and the dudes over at Killable Productions, but I'm sure they'll have some sort of update in the future for us. Dead and Lovely just recently did an episode on It's a Wonderful Knife. So if you guys are aware of that film, check out their mini-sode on that. I think their most recent one that I listened to was The Shining, but that was from like years ago. I've been going through a revisit thing with that podcast as well. Definitely just check out Dead and Lovely in general. They've done some really good recent episodes. And then obviously their back catalog is choice. It Crept From the 80s is our boy Chris Sieber. Check his shit out as well. He's had some holiday sales going on where you can get his films. And check out the dudes over at Hamityville Horror because they're doing cool stuff for the indie scene as well. We're going to close this out tonight with the preview for, unfortunately, not our next film. We're still waiting on our boy Cody to get in there with his selection, and we'll get that out to you guys as soon as possible. But, we are going to plug our next film in the sort of H.G. Lewis marathon that we're putting out here, because all of my selections are going to be H.G. Lewis till we get through all of his splatter films. And the next one is Color Me Blood Red. Are you familiar with this one, Brandon?
That one, at least, I've seen clips of.
All right. Well, here's the trailer for it. Enjoy. Don't take off. I need to talk to you for a minute after we go off air. Anyway, cheers. Color Me Blood Red.
You are seeing scenes from the next motion picture to play this theater. A motion picture in which you dare not become too involved. You must keep reminding yourself, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. It's just a movie. It is not for the eyes and ears of anyone under 16 years of age. Color me blood red. Fiendish is the word for it. Color me blood red. This is Adam, and this is a story of Adam and evil. This is a film drenched in crimson, a blood-spattered study in the macabre. Color me blood red. You must keep reminding yourself, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. It's just a movie. Color me blood red. It will leave you aghast. Color me blood red. Color me blood red.
He has to be the only dude in the universe to ever fucking pronounce macabre as macabre. See you back here next time, guys.